You've been here all week at this Global AIDS Conference. What touched you most? What story or what person?
I think what I was most touched by was how in this age of Brexit and what's going on in the United States and all of this stuff, there's this massive room full of people who basically could all be off making more money doing something else, at least the providers of care, who still get up every day and think their main purpose in life ought to be to help other people live longer, better lives, and to help poor countries build healthcare systems so they can take care of their people, and to make sure that babies should be born free of the HIV virus, even if their mothers are infected. And they just do it. They still have the energy to do it. They're not tired. They're not broken. They don't buy Brexit and public health. They think that we have to build shared health, shared prosperity.
They're truly committed. Truly committed. Yeah.
And it's, in other words, and they don't even say what I just said. They just said, no, I'm not going to change the way I live. I'm not going to change what I believe. So who cares who wins the election? This is what I know works to save lives. It's very moving.
In 2002, you met Nelson Mandela at the AIDS conference in Barcelona, and he specifically and personally asked you to commit yourself to this battle. Do you recall exactly what he said to you at that time that made you become so committed that you're still doing this up until now?
Well, Mandela and I were already working as the co-chairman of a group. So Mandela and I were going around to things like the World AIDS Conference, rattling a tin cup, asking for money. And as it turned out, we had many more years together. It's one of the great blessings of my life. But he looked at me and he said, he says, I was in prison a long time. I don't know what's the matter with my body. I don't know how strong it's going to be. I'll stay at this as long as I can. But you have to do this. He said, you can't walk away.
He was also someone who, I think I could say, privately mentored you, publicly stood up for you in difficult times in your career.
Oh my God, yes.
During the impeachment proceedings, he was there for you, speaking out.
He called me on the phone when the impeachment was starting. And he said, your Congress wants to give me the Congressional Gold Medal. He said, as the president of South Africa, I cannot refuse this. But he said, I may be old, but I am not a fool. I know precisely why they are doing it. So he said, here's what you are going to do. He's telling me this. I said, what am I going to do, Madiba? He says, you are going to host me the day before. And we're going to have an event in the White House. And I'm going to tell the American people exactly why we need you and what I think of what is going on. And he did it. It was the darndest thing you ever saw.
If we focus on one of the most successful things recently that happened, and you mentioned it just now, Eswatini, former Swaziland, the country with the highest rate of HIV infections. 1/3 of the population is HIV positive. The project there has been groundbreaking, I could say. Infection rates have dropped with nearly 50%. What is the key? Have you discovered the key now?
Yeah.
What is it?
First of all, we don't go anywhere that the government doesn't invite us, because we know that we can't stay forever.
They have to be self-sustainable.
Yes. Working with AIDS funds, we just figured out a way to answer the how question for them. And so we helped them set up a system of testing. We helped them set up a system of treatment. We helped them look at whether we can give antiretroviral medicine preventively to people to keep them from transferring the virus.
Was that taboo? Was that taboo before?
Well, it's taboo in some places. In a place like Eswatini, it was not taboo. It just wasn't part of the deal. But now there are people saying, oh, you don't want to do this. This will encourage people to have sex before they should. I know I'm older now, but I'm very skeptical that something that government officials do for public health discourages people from having sex when they're young.
It never does.
I doubt that. I mean, I think we should do what's best for public health. And we found something really astonishing. We've known all along that the biggest danger of communicating the HIV virus from someone who has it to someone who doesn't occurs in the first 2 months in which they're infected, because you're more virulent. And it's dangerous because almost nobody knows they are infected until they start to feel sick, which
but
they
it's
don't
too late.
in the first 2 months.
Right, so the key is early testing, massive early testing.
So you have massive early testing, and then when you have a high-risk group, you give the antiretrovirals as a prophylactic before you know they need it. Together, those things can dramatically reduce the transfer of the virus. Now,
is that what will stop the epidemic?
In theory, it could. In practice, that's going to be almost impossible. That is, it will certainly stop it in a ton of cases. And there is now serious work being done on a long-lasting, injectable version of the antiretrovirals. And if we do that, that's close to a vaccine. I don't think most people understand how really hard it is in poor countries to turn your good intentions into real changes, and how terribly important the civil society can be for that. I mean, that's why the Dutch should be really proud of the postcode lottery. It's now the third largest donor in the world among non-governmental organizations.
President Trump has proposed to cut more than $1 billion from global HIV funding in 2019. A mistake. It's a 20% reduction. The estimated human cost of life will be 300,000 lives a year. Have you spoken to him about this?
No, but he knows how I feel. I mean, I called George W. Bush the first 3 days after the election in 2016. And I said, they're going to go after PEPFAR. And I said, the Democrats will be fine. We're for this. But you got to help all those Republicans that help you pass it. You got to get them to say no to the White House on this. They need a clear signal to leave this alone.
Could you call Trump about this if you wanted to?
Yeah, but I don't think it would make any difference. I'll think about it, but it's, you know, he does these games, and we're probably too important to him to demonize in the politics of spectacle. So we'll just see. I knew him quite well before, and when I called him to congratulate him after the election, he said, "Thanks for calling." He said, "I'm really terrible about all the terrible things I said about you and Hillary." But people were so mad, I had to make them mad at other people. My whole strategy was to make them mad at you guys instead of me.
What did you say when he said that?
Nothing. It was true. I knew it was true.
Did you accept the apology?
You had to be, well, I mean, you couldn't blame him. He was certainly empowered by a lot of people in the media helped him. So, but it was true. And it was obvious, and we couldn't figure out. It was the only thing I didn't know about this election beforehand was I didn't understand the extent of the Russian role or the extent to which voting machines might have been tampered with. But the big mega stuff, you could see it before your very eyes.
Did you trust him before? You knew him well, you said. Did you trust him before?
I never thought about it one way or the other. I didn't have to trust him. I only knew him. You know, I played in several charity golf tournaments where he was there. So I never thought about it.
You're the ultimate master in making a connection with people. It's one of their God-given talents that you have. Did you also, apart from Russian meddling and machines, voting machines, did you sense that he was connecting to people, to voters?
Absolutely. The people that I grew up with, yeah. Because he basically said in the primary, you guys should really be for me in the Republican primary, the white working class, because I hate all the same people you do. The immigrants, the people that are feeding at the government trough, you know, all that stuff. But unlike the other guys, they treat you like a cheap date. That is, they say you have to vote Republican because you hate the Democrats. I'll actually do something for you. I'll put up a wall and give you the jobs the Mexicans used to have, and I'll send the Chinese products home, and you guys can make it here.
You knew that would resound with people when they heard it.
Of course. And of course, and it is not happening, of course. That is, but that's why you have periodic trips to the border. And look, we've had barely no crossings of the border by Mexicans since 2010. The whole thing was just created, but it's a great media event.
But for you, I mean, you sensed it at that time. Did you warn your wife? Did you say, listen, the message?
Yeah. Well, she knew it. We lived 18 years in Arkansas. She lived there.
Will you ever retire as an AIDS activist?
Only if there's a cure. You know, suppose we get a vaccine tomorrow, then we got to figure out how to get the vaccine out there to everybody where there's no system for doing that.
There's no retirement for you. No golfing.
I play golf, but I'm just no good anymore because I spend more time on this. But I love it. I mean, I've reached the age now where I love being with my family. I love time spent with my grandchildren. Hillary and I like to take walks and go to movies. Otherwise, I want to work.
Are you a happy man?
Oh, yes. I am. I've been very blessed. And I'm very grateful. I worry about my country because there are so many things happening that I strongly disagree with. But I find it unproductive to join the age of anger and resentment. I don't think you make very good decisions when you're angry or resentful. You'll soon be a mom, see? And your child will have many things to be angry about and many things to resent. And one of the great tests of your parenting will be how you teach your child to deal with frustration, anger, and disappointment.
Well, tell me.
Well, it depends on what the facts are. But in general, we don't get very far feeling sorry for ourselves and just being mad and hurting somebody. Mostly we feel better when we do things that empower ourselves and empower others. When we're trying to build up, not tear down. When we're trying to bring people together, not drive them apart.
Have you let the
Now,
anger...
it's hard to remember that now because that's the driving apart is what's being rewarded in politics. But it won't last. The world we live in is too interdependent. And over the long run, working together across the lines that divide us works better than breaking up into little groups that spend time demeaning each other. It's a loser strategy.
And give me some hope. What is the time span for this? When will it change?
That's what I told the AIDS group today. Think about the AIDS thing. Think about the conference. I said, go make something good happen. And, you know, first time your child comes home from school crying, you'll have to deal with the cause of the crying. Then realize the child can make something good happen. Can read a book, make a friend, do something kind for somebody else.
The baby is listening to you.
You know, life is short. It seems to be in the Dutch DNA to do things for the larger world. That's a good deal. And this is my last thought. I want you to think about this. Most people who ever lived have never had any choice over what they did with their waking hours. That is, they worked to live, to eat, to support a family, whatever, no choice, whatever. More people on earth today have some or a great deal of choice over what they do with their waking hours. Why in the world would you spend those hours you have control over doing destructive things when you can do productive things? Doing things which increase your understanding instead of things which may increase your power for a nanosecond, but make you dumber. I mean, just keep the big things in mind. Keep the trend lines in mind. And I think we'll be all right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time.